Story 1. As a teacher, I think a big sign is that they cannot hear or believe any negative or formative feedback about their teenager's behavior. It is sad for the child because when they go out into the real world, they get nasty shocks when the consequences of their actions start. For example, a school might tell a parent for 6 years that their child's behavior and attitude are unacceptable and inappropriate. The parent won't hear of it. The teenager turns 17 or 18 and gets a job and immediately gets fired for their poor attitude or for stealing, or they may get arrested for fighting or assault. I've seen this happen over and over again. It is an epic failure of parenting. Sometimes they realize when the teen is out of control at 17 or 18 and getting arrested, and they may even beg the school for help, but it is largely too late for the school to help then. Story 2. Honestly, sometimes if kids are too polite, it shows that they fear the parent and that stepping out of line could be dangerous for them. I was a super quiet, polite kid and everyone loved it, but there was a good reason. Story 3. Parents who demand respect from their children and boast to others about how their children respect them usually don't know what respect really means. What they actually want is to be feared, and they parent entirely based on fear. It makes me immediately think their children are disadvantaged. Story 4. Well, there are really two kinds. The ones who failed as human beings out of cruelty or addiction, who actively harmed their kids, murder, abuse, and those who didn't actively harm their kids but who nonetheless failed as parents to raise them. The first kind makes the news, the second makes terrible people. Story 5. You don't see your children as actual people, and instead treat them like property that needs to be controlled. This is exactly how the kid's dad and his girlfriend treat our kids, and it's exactly why they want nothing to do with them. Story 6. I know everyone here has short answers, but I'm here to tell a story. My cousin is sober now, but back when she was an active user for years, she and her dad went on a long walk and talked about all her reasons why she was doing drugs. She was still in the no ownership phase, so it was everyone else. And one of her many reasons was that he was always off in another town or state working. A few months later, that same uncle was working a gig, let's call it, for a family-owned business. We were all sitting around a clearing for a brief part of the evening, and a man we all speculate is homeless comes through the clearing with his son, trying to fish out bottles and cans for money. This is the main part of this post. Many people would point to the man taking his son along for his dumpster diving as the failure, but in that moment where that kid actually looked fairly content to be going on such a mission with his dad, there was my uncle abruptly looking dead inside, saying that guy is a good dad because he's spending time with his son. Maybe you had to be there. It was sad for everyone. This is the part where I would say, we are all trying our best. But that's not true for all the people I've seen on courtroom television on YouTube, but mostly everyone else really does try to do the best they can do. Story 7. If the adult child basically gets by in life by lying to and stealing from friends and family, all while the parent constantly jumps to their defense and refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Story 8. When their child cannot function as an adult. My entire goal as a parent is to raise a functional, capable, productive adult. That means not overprotecting him from the world or controlling things. I see so many of my child's classmates who have been coddled and controlled, where at 7, they act like they are 2 years old, screaming uncontrollably when they have a small fall, throwing things and screaming if told no, with their parents speaking for them at every turn. All I can think is how troubled that child will be when they get older if the behavior continues. They will certainly be the kids who bring their parent to a job interview or call their boss or college administration department to handle everything because the child is so unprepared for life. Story 9. Disrespectful kids with no emotional regulation. If your kid does not know how to carry themselves with kindness and respect, you have definitely failed. And not just as a parent, but as a human, because you are probably not an example of that for them. Story 10. My sister retired from being a school teacher for 5th and 6th grade for most of her tenure 5 years ago, just before COVID-19. The one thing she said all along that she wasn't really ready for way back when she started was just how many parents simply refused to believe their child was healthy and did not have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or autism. Some, to the extent they'd take their undisciplined child from one new doctor to another until they found one agreeable. Then these never say no, I'm my kid's friend. Never set boundaries parents would smugly tell my sister that they told her so. It became particularly galling to her a few years down the road when she herself had a son with Asperger's syndrome. Story 11. When they do not know how to respect men or women when dating. When I was dating, some men would be incredibly rude via dating apps, opening the conversation with disrespectful communication. I would just say that their parents must have done a horrible job raising them and that I feel bad they had such a poor upbringing. It was the best response. They would always start defending their parents and saying they were raised well. I hope it gave them food for thought. Story 12. When a student comes up to me and says, "My mommy or daddy said not to tell anyone, but," and proceeds to tell me the most horrifying things that still keep me up at night. Story 13. Your 21-year-old daughter kills herself, and your 20-year-old daughter is a basket case with complex post-traumatic stress disorder and agoraphobia. Thanks, Mom. Also, when your daughter writes a 250-page book about you and another 230-page book of advice for other children like her. Story 14. When you fail so much as a parent that you would rather discipline by violence than try to understand and resolve your child's behavior problems in a responsible and empathetic manner. Story 15. For us teachers, the kids who smell, don't have snacks, wear the same clothes every day or close to it, don't read and sign forms and return them without 100 reminders, don't get their kids up into school and are combative when contacted. Story 16. If you don't know a thing about your kids, my dad was super uninvolved as a parent. He wanted love and respect without doing any of the work of parenting us. He was very unhappy having to provide basic care, such as changing diapers, playing, or being left alone with the kids, and wanted us to be quiet and fawning. I have some distinct allergies, always have. To this day, he'll offer food or something else I'm allergic to, and I have to remind him. He's always shocked. He frequently chides me for being a late sleeper and frequently late. I'm neither of those things. In fact, I'm one of those people that tends to be extremely early to everything. I usually get up at 7 to 8 on a weekend, 6 on a weekday. Not a late sleeper unless I'm exhausted and have no plans. He was shocked when I came out as transgender. Kept insisting I never showed any signs. I reminded him of how I used to scream and cry when I was put in dresses, how I refused to attend school on my period, and how I categorically refused to be associated with anything seen as feminine growing up. He couldn't remember any of that and insisted I was the one misremembering. When I went to college, he insisted it was a waste because I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. Not only did I know exactly what I wanted to do, I had been consistent about what I wanted since like 4th or 5th grade. He confuses my brothers and my birthdays, personal details, etc. He has no inkling of our hobbies or pastimes. He couldn't tell you anything about any details about us at all. We do share these things with him. He just doesn't hear or have any interest in them. That's a failed parent. That's someone who isn't a parent at all. That's someone fulfilling a legal requirement to have an adult technically supervising the children. My brother raised me more than that guy did. Story 17. I work at a math tutoring center, and we have a 10th grader doing 4th grade material with us because her family let her education fall by the wayside for this long. No, she does not have any kind of learning disability. Story 18. When the child goes no contact, they literally have to choose themselves over you because it's a matter of self-preservation. Nobody self-orphans if they have any other option. Grieving someone who is still alive is awful. It's a fair trauma in its own right. Story 19. Depends. Even if you are an absolutely immoral person, you can still have good relationships with your kids. You can be a very good person but fail as a parent. Story 20. When the person deflects all blame during an argument. I love my mom, and she did everything she could to provide for me and my sister. But that doesn't mean that it makes her a good mother. She thinks that the fact she provided for us is enough to earn our love and respect. During a recent argument I had with my mom, I pointed out that she always deflects the blame onto someone else and never wants to admit that she is to blame for something because she can't bear that fact. She's been through a lot of pain in her life, but that doesn't excuse her from the mistakes she made while raising me. I blamed her for not giving me enough love as a child. I blamed her for giving me self-hatred and self-doubt issues with her constant negative remarks and berating on anything I've ever done. She said that she did it because she loved me and wanted me to do better and that it's my fault that I've taken it that way. Literally zero admission of guilt on how she damaged my mental health. Story 21. I'm 5 feet 11 inches, so I'm not the biggest sign, but I am noticeable. All joking aside, though, I rarely speak with my father these days. 90% of that is through single-sentence texts that happen once every other month or so. She and my mom split when I was a few months old. He took me because she was 16 and he was 25. He worked a lot when I was young. Like, I never saw him. A lot of things happened because of him never being around. One night, when I was about 8 years old, he came into my room to wake me up sometime after midnight. He told me to get dressed because he was getting married at a truck stop just outside of Victorville, California. Soon after, he had the first of 3 daughters with her, and I became the family shadow. A lot has happened since then. A lot of it my fault, but I'm positive he thinks none of it was his fault and that he did his best for me. Story 22. They are raising their grandkids. If you are a parent to your child, you can be friends with your grandchildren. If you are a friend to your child, you get to be a parent to your grandchildren. Story 23. This will be an unpopular opinion on Reddit, but their adult kids are not in education, employment, or training. You either took away their confidence so they're incapable of accomplishing anything, or you coddled them so much that they don't think they should have to do anything, or some truly messed up combination of both. Story 24. A lot of people have said that adult children who cut ties with their parents are problematic, but I came to say the opposite is also true. Adult children who are exceptionally and unhealthily attached to and reliant on their parents. Part of your role as a parent is to prepare your child to be able to stand on their own in the world. Housing right now is tough, so I'm not including that in this statement. There's no shame in living at home while you have to. But I mean emotionally, interpersonally, financially, at least knowledge-wise, etc. Teaching basic life skills is important. I've known fully grown 25-year-old adults who have struggled with cooking basic meals, doing laundry, knowing how to sweep and mop. Basic skills needed to take care of themselves and their space. Having your parents necessary in every single tiny aspect of your life as an adult means they failed in raising and teaching you throughout the rest of it, in my opinion. You should be able to have a relationship at a healthy distance built on respect, not necessity. Story 25. Having to raise their own grandkids. Raise your children so you can spoil your grandkids. Spoil your children, and you'll be raising your grandkids. Story 26. When they won't fix their mistakes. When they can't admit their mistakes. When they won't even acknowledge them. Then it becomes a cycle of abuse that doesn't really have a positive outcome. Story 27. I think one of the biggest signs is when a child grows up without a sense of empathy or respect for others. If a child is consistently cruel, dismissive of others' feelings, or has no understanding of basic kindness, it usually reflects deeper issues in how they were raised. Good parenting involves teaching kids to understand and care for the impact their actions have on others. Of course, every child is different, and outside influences can play a role. But a lack of empathy suggests a failure to instill core values at home. It's not just about discipline or rules. It's about raising someone who understands the value of human connection. Story 28. My mom is an overprotective mom who sends mixed signals. She overprotects me and, at the same time, brings me down. It's like having a toxic relationship where someone initially shows excessive affection but then becomes angry and abusive. Feels like you need to leave, but you can't because guilt consumes you. It's as if you owe them for everything they've done for you. Now I'm 25, unemployed, afraid of working, still studying with no friends, goals, or motivation. I'm just drifting through life, hoping that one day things might get better. Don't do that to your kids. Let them go out and make their own mistakes. Story 29. Perhaps I'm unfair here because you cannot blame this solely on parents. But look at the state of humanity today. People are selfish, judgmental bullies. They have trauma that shapes their whole personalities. I feel parents fail to shape their personalities. A few things I see. Kids so eager for attention they do anything to stand out. Angry people. A need to self-medicate, be that through addictions, possessions, money issues. So many more. Awful mental health issues due in part to emotional needs not being met. Huge sense of entitlement. Chip on their shoulders. Disregard for other people. Lack of empathy. Story 30. When their kids grow up and do not know what to do with life, they settle for less and are afraid of failures because the parents have been restricting their lives, being overprotective, deciding everything for them, and projecting their fear of hardships onto them.